Today we're going to talk about children, because apparently that's what Democratic politicians like Kirsten Gillibrand want to talk about. They want to talk about the children who are allegedly being separated from their parents at the border. But instead, we're going to talk about the children who are being separated from their parents by a sex cult in New York that is closely linked to Kirsten Gillibrand. Now, this is Miss Gillibrand, the senator from New York, in one of her photo shoots for Vogue magazine, looking very glamorous. Big League Politics has interviewed Frank Parlato, a former employee of the NXIVM sex cult, who tells us exclusively that Kirsten Gillibrand's stepmother, Gwen Belcourt, was an active member of the NXIVM sex cult for at least 2 years, while Kirsten Gillibrand's father, Doug Rutnick, the lobbyist, was employed by the NXIVM sex cult. Now, the NXIVM sex cult is the thing you're hearing about in the news with Allison Mack, the actress from Smallville. It was run by a man named Keith Raniere, and here's a picture of that winner. Keith Raniere referred to himself as Vanguard, while he was branding women with his initials and engaging in all kinds of other illicit activities. He and Allison Mack are now both on trial for human trafficking and for child sex trafficking. It turns out that the people who were funding this whole satanic operation, the Bronfman sisters, heiresses to the Seagrams fortune, are major, major donors to Hillary Clinton and to Kirsten Gillibrand. Now, Frank Parlato, the former NXIVM employee, tells us that this man, Keith Raniere, and his fancy friends in the NXIVM sex cult were importing young girls as sex slaves from Chihuahua, Mexico. Now, that certainly makes sense considering our reporting from last week on the alleged child sex bunker that was found in Tucson, Arizona, where there was a child's skull actually found very close to the bunker. They found a bloody knife, they found children's toys, they found women's underwear, they found all kinds of human DNA, wigs for children at this bunker in Tucson. The authorities refused to investigate. Snopes, the fact-checking organ for the liberals and the Democrats, went out of their way to try to discredit the story. Imagine being that morally corrupt, being that Snopes blogger who, when he hears about a child's sex trafficking story, immediately jumps into action to try to debunk it. That person is not right with God. Frank Parlato tells us that human experiments were being done by this man, Keith Raniere, at what he called the Rainbow Cultural Garden, in which he was putting his female sex slaves under hypnosis. He had a program where he actually separated the children of his female sex slaves from their parents, and he would educate them. How would he educate them? Every day he would bring in 7 nannies to speak 7 different languages to the children. Why would he do this? It would confuse them. It would render them illiterate. It would render them unable to speak. Maybe because he didn't want them talking to authorities about what was going on. Why the number 7? Frank Parlato tells us, and this is an exact quote, he believes himself to be Lucifer. Keith Raniere believes himself to be Lucifer. He calls himself a demon, and we actually have a tape of him calling himself a demon. This man obviously is a Satanist, and these were satanic activities going on at this sex cult that Kirsten Gillibrand's stepmother was an active member of. Meanwhile, the Clintons' friend from Arkansas, Richard Mays, the lawyer, who did a video interview on tape with Keith Raniere, was carrying out legal hit jobs going after the enemies of Keith Raniere. This is one of the Clintons' longest friends, longest old-time friends. So let's really talk about what's happening to the children, why don't we? Let's talk about the fact that of the 12,000 children that are being detained at the border, 10,000 of them came without their parents. So you want to talk about the other 2,000? Well, Border Patrol says that it's the policy to separate children from their parents if it is suspected that the adults are not actually related to the children, if they don't know their names, if they can't spell their names, if they don't have any proof that they're related to the children. Why? Because human traffickers pump children across the border to sell them as sex slaves, and they also use children in order to get adults into the country. That's how human trafficking works. But all of a sudden, the Democrats, the party that murders babies, is concerned about the children. The party that convinces young women that life is so hopeless that they have no choice but to slaughter their babies. All of a sudden, they're the moral arbiters. The Obama administration actually placed children with human traffickers as part of this program that they created. Who reported that? Some conspiracy theory websites? The Washington Post newspaper reported that. Is Snopes going to go against the Washington Post? Let's talk about the children in Hollywood and what's happening with Robert De Niro and Harvey Weinstein, these great Democrats, these great members of the resistance. They're so morally upstanding with their false idols. Robert De Niro, who said horrible things about Trump at the Tony Awards, was interrogated in Paris in 2008, or 1998 rather, in connection with a prostitution sting. Meanwhile, Harvey Weinstein is now on trial for doing some of the most heinous things to women that I've ever heard. Meanwhile, Hollywood, Ben Affleck, George Clooney, Matt Damon, Quentin Tarantino, who makes violently pornographic films soaked in blood and gun violence, they have the gall to lecture middle America about values and decency, while they make movies about witchcraft, while they sell products based on satanic symbols to our kids. Make no mistake about what their agenda is or what these people are doing. They don't care about children. They don't care about life. This interview with Frank Parlato that we have up on our site is one of the most disturbing things that I've ever written or that I've ever read. And it is going to stay with you for a long time if you read it, the same way it's going to stay with me. But fortunately, we have the opportunity to resist evil when we see it in our world. As Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, referring to the Nazis, and I think it applies here too, silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. God bless all of you and your families, and keep reading bigleaguepolitics.com.